Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hey, everyone.
Today, we're plunging into a story that, well, it feels like a real blast from the past for a lot of people, but it definitely reveals some stark realities about big business today.
Yeah, it does. We've been looking at reports from places like Al.com, The Street, The Economic Times.
Right.
To really understand this surprising news about, a truly iconic ice cream brand.
Absolutely iconic. And our mission here in this deep dive is to get to the core of why this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what does it mean for the brand, for its fans, and maybe what larger lessons we can pull from this about like corporate ownership and maybe vulnerability.
Exactly. Because this whole story, the fate of this beloved pharmacy ice cream, it's directly tied up with the financial struggles of a really major pharmacy chain.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Right. So the headline that grabbed everyone's attention is pretty dramatic. We're talking 500 Thrifty ice cream locations set to close across the country.
Wow, 500. That sounds like a huge number of ice cream counters just gone.
It really is significant.
Yeah.
And the basic reason, as all our sources make clear, is that Thrifty Ice Cream is owned by Rite Aid.
Ah, okay.
And Rite Aid has just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Again, for the second time in less than a year.
A second bankruptcy filing so quickly. What does it tell us about where they're at?
Well, it signals some really deep, persistent financial problems. The sources point out Rite Aid first filed for Chapter 11 back in October 2023.
Okay.
And that move, it had helped them restructure about $2 billion in debt, close some stores, resolve some legal stuff. But clearly, it wasn't enough. They filed again in early May 2025, which really indicates the earlier actions just didn't stabilize the company. This second filing seems much more focused on selling off what's left.
Selling off assets, maybe winding things down. Got it. So Thrifty Ice Cream's current predicament is a direct result of Rite Aid's ongoing crisis. Okay, before we dig deeper into that, can you give us a bit of background on Thrifty Ice Cream itself? Because it feels like more than just, typical pharmacy ice cream, especially if you grew up out west.
Oh, absolutely. It has this really unique history and kind of status. Thrifty Ice Cream actually started way back in 1940.
1940, wow.
Yeah, launched from a small factory in West Hollywood, Los Angeles.
And it wasn't just about, selling ice cream in a corner.
No, that's right. It quickly became sort of central to the whole pharmacy experience. It was known for its quality, apparently won awards. And by the 1970s, it had achieved this genuine cult status all over California and, beyond. People would go to Thrifty pharmacies specifically for the ice cream.
I can totally see that. A destination ice cream counter inside a pharmacy. Okay. And then Rite Aid comes along and acquires this iconic brand back in 1996.
Yep. Which brings us pretty much right up to today. Rite Aid is in this second bankruptcy process, and their plan involves selling off their remaining stores. We're talking hundreds of them out of roughly 1,200 they had.
And Rite Aid's CEO, Matt Schroeder, is quoted, right, acknowledging the financial challenges, mentioning the rapidly evolving retail and healthcare landscapes.
Yeah, he did. But he also expressed some hope, mentioning meaningful interest from a number of potential national and regional strategic acquirers for the main pharmacy business.
So they're hoping someone buys the core pharmacy part.
Right. And he stressed their priorities are ensuring uninterrupted pharmacy services for customers and preserving jobs for as many associates as possible, trying to manage this difficult period.
Okay, but back to the ice cream counters. The reason 500 are closing is because they are literally inside those Rite Aid stores that are closing or being sold off.
Precisely. And this is where the street uses this really striking phrase. They call the ice cream counter closures collateral damage.
Collateral damage. Huh. Like innocent bystanders caught in a bigger fight.
That's exactly the idea. The street compares it to, say, businesses suffering during the pandemic because office workers stayed home, Not the restaurant's fault.
Right, right.
In this case, these 500 Thrifty counters aren't necessarily closing because the ice cream itself wasn't selling. They're closing because they're physically part of the pharmacies that Rite Aid is ditching. The sources highlight that these counters can't be sold as a separate asset. They're just fixtures inside a bigger thing that's going down.
So they're casualties of Rite Aid's corporate restructuring, not really about the ice cream business on its own. That's tough, especially given how unique that Thrifty ice cream experience actually is.
It really is distinctive. One thing fans immediately know is their patented scoop.
Oh, yeah. The square scoop or cylinder, right? That purpose shape on the cone. That's totally a Thrifty thing.
That's the one. And they've apparently always leaned into flavor innovation. The sources mention their team tasting like hundreds of flavors regularly and developing some pretty unusual custom creations.
Like sriracha swirl and bacon and cheddar. Is that what the sources said? That's wow.
Bold. Yeah, definitely adventurous. Points for creativity for sure.
Can't say they played it safe.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And this read also brings in the human side, talking about the employees at the Thrifty factory in El Monte, California. Some people have worked there for decades, apparently hand-marking each carton. There's a real legacy there.
A real history and community around the brand. Okay, so 500 scoop counters inside Rite Aid are closing. But does that mean Thrifty Ice Cream is just vanishing completely? What's the future look like for the brand itself?
Well, the future is definitely uncertain for those specific 500 spots, yeah. But it's not necessarily the absolute end for the Thrifty brand as a whole.
Okay.
So while the counters inside Rite Aid stores are closing, Thrifty Ice Cream is also sold in other ways.
Like you can buy it in tubs at the grocery store.
Exactly. You can find Thrifty Ice Cream in the freezer section at various retailers. That includes some Rite Aids that might remain, but also places like Albertsons, Vaughn's, and others.
Okay, so packaged ice cream is still out there. What about getting it scooped, that whole experience?
Right, so that's the crucial part. Thrifty Ice Cream is also available at scoop counters in other locations, mainly California and Arizona, but apparently in a growing number of places across the U.S., even Mexico. And the key thing here is that some of these locations are independently franchised or owned. They're not directly part of Rite Aid's corporate structure or this bankruptcy filing.
Oh, that's a really important distinction then. So those franchise counters, they aren't automatically closing just because Rite Aid is in trouble.
That seems to be correct. Their operations aren't tied to Rite Aid's specific bankruptcy fate. And even beyond that, the Thrifty Ice Cream brand itself, plus its factory in El Monte, these are considered assets.
Assets.
Yeah, assets that Rite Aid plans to sell as part of the whole bankruptcy process.
So the brand name, the recipes, the factory, it's all basically up for sale.
It seems so, yes. Which opens up a few possibilities, right? A buyer could come in and keep distributing the packaged ice cream to grocery stores. Or they could continue supplying those non-Rite Aid scoop counters. Or, maybe they buy the factory for some totally different manufacturing purpose.
Or, and this feels like the big question mark, maybe a buyer doesn't show up specifically for the ice cream assets.
That is the main uncertainty, yeah. But there's a quote from Evan Lovett, who hosts a podcast called LA in a Minute. He sounds kind of optimistic.
What do you say?
He said, "If history is any guide, Thrifty Ice Cream is going to be scooping up smiles for years to come. Just maybe not at your local Rite Aid."
That quote really sums it up, doesn't it? A likely end for the counters inside Rite Aid, the ones we knew, but maybe potential for the brand to live on in other ways.
And that kind of brings us to the bigger picture, the so what's for you listening. This story, it's about more than just losing 500 ice cream spots, even though that's sad for fans.
Right.
It really highlights how the financial health, the whole corporate structure of a huge parent company like Rite Aid can have these profound, sometimes devastating ripple effects on smaller brands underneath them, even really beloved ones.
So even a brand with cult status, like you said, with unique things like the scoop, loyal customers, it can still get swept up and become, collateral damage when the owner is failing.
Absolutely. It's a really stark illustration of the risks involved when different kinds of brands get bought up and integrated into a larger company that's struggling.
Yeah.
This whole situation shows how certain assets just become inseparable from the parent company's fate, making them really vulnerable during bankruptcy. And it gives us a peek into how complex these asset sales are during Chapter 11. How things get valued, bundled up, and how the future of individual pieces of a business gets decided.
It's a very clear look at corporate dynamics playing out, affecting something real that people have, like sentimental connections to.
For sure. It's a powerful reminder of how decisions made in, corporate boardrooms can directly impact local experiences and these cherished brands.
Okay, so let's recap quickly. The closure of 500 Thrifty Ice Cream counters, that's a direct result of Rite Aid's second Chapter 11 bankruptcy. These counters are inside Rite Aid stores, so they're basically collateral damage, can't be sold separately. However, the Thrifty Ice Cream brand itself, known for its history, that unique scoop, the flavors it might survive. Through package sales in grocery stores, maybe through those independent scoop locations.
And potentially through a sale of the brand and the factory assets to someone new.
Exactly.
And what this whole situation really lays bare is just how fragile even iconic historic brands can be when they become part of these larger, struggling corporate structures.
Yeah.
So as Thrifty Ice Cream's future kind of hangs in the balance, really depending on whether a buyer emerges from Rite Aid's sale,
Yeah.
it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Will that distinctive square scoop keep delivering smiles for another generation? Or is this maybe the beginning of the end for a real piece of West Coast history?
Definitely something to think about.